There comes a quiet moment in every life, a soft inner ache, a gentle trembling in the heart where the soul whispers, "You were never meant to be a number. You were born to be a presence." We live in a world obsessed with measurement. How much you earn, how many followers you have, what title you hold, what you've accomplished by 30. Whether your waistline fits within the narrow confines of cultural praise, but none of these metrics know your soul. None of them touch the eternal. None of them measure peace or kindness or the divine breath you carry within you, the breath that was given freely before you even knew the word success. From the moment we open our eyes to this world, we're trained to calculate our worth. We're taught to compare, to strive, to accumulate, to improve, not out of joy, but out of a sense that we're not yet enough. The world doesn't say be, it says prove. And in that proving, we forget the sacred stillness from which we came. But I'm here to remind you of a truth older than the stars and closer than your breath. You are already worthy. You don't have to earn your place in the universe. You belong by virtue of your being. Not your doing, not your performing, not your producing. Your being, your mere miraculous being, is enough. There's no tree in the forest trying to be taller than the one next to it. No cloud hurrying across the sky to impress the wind. There's no flower blushing in shame for blooming late. And yet we, the most conscious expressions of life, forget to simply be what we are. We trade the vastness of our soul for the tight corset of identity. We strap on labels like badges, CEO, failure, mother, addict, survivor, millionaire, dropout. And we forget that before any of that, we were light, pure, untouched, infinite. And when we forget that truth, we suffer. Not because life is punishing us, but because we've wandered too far from what's real. We've bought into the illusion that our value is conditional, that love is earned, that rest is lazy, that joy must be deserved. But the soul doesn't deal in conditions. It doesn't wait for your resume. It doesn't ask for your credentials. The soul only asks, will you come home? Will you return to the quiet within you? Will you remember that peace isn't something you find, it's something you stop resisting? That freedom is not out there. It's in the release of everything that tells you you're not already free. You see, the great lie of the ego is this, that you are not yet complete and that the world holds the missing piece. So we chase, we race. We measure our lives in outcomes and accolades, in pounds lost and dollars gained, but no measurement ever touches fulfillment. It only feeds the hunger. And so I ask you, what if today you stopped chasing? What if you paused fully, deeply, and allowed yourself to just be, not as a tactic, not as a spiritual strategy, but as a holy return? Being is not the absence of ambition. It is the return to alignment. It is the end of striving for what you already are. It is the willingness to feel your own presence and say, this is enough. I am enough. This breath is holy. This moment is sacred. The world may not applaud that choice. It may even call it irresponsible, but your soul will rise in celebration. It will dance in the silence. It will recognize itself again, not in the mirror of the world, but in the mirror of God. And there, in that sacred recognition, suffering begins to dissolve. Because suffering lives in resistance, in the gap between what is and what we think should be. Suffering is the product of a mind that has forgotten its divine origin. It is the child of measurement, the offspring of comparison. But presence, true presence, is the antidote. When you are here, fully here, you can't suffer. You can feel pain, yes. You can feel sadness. But suffering requires a story, and presence dissolves the story. It brings you back to the now, where the soul lives, where grace is not a reward but the air you breathe. So breathe, beloved soul. Not to reach somewhere, not to escape, but to return. Return to the truth that you are not a project to fix. You are a masterpiece to feel. You don't have to earn your peace. You only have to stop blocking it. You don't need more time. You need more presence. You don't need more approval. You need more truth. And your truth is this: you were never meant to be measured. You were meant to be experienced, felt, lived, loved. Let go of the performance. Let go of the applause. Let go of the silent scoreboard in your mind, ticking off wins and losses. You are not a contestant in the game of life. You are the awareness of life itself. And when you live from that awareness, a great peace arrives, a sacred clarity. You no longer try to prove your worth, you embody it. You no longer grasp for success, you magnetize it through alignment. You no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer strive for freedom, you realize you are always free. Let the world chase. Let it measure. Let it calculate. You be still. You be love. You be now. Because the only thing that truly transforms your life is not what you achieve, but how deeply you remember who you are. And you, dear soul, are a being of light. You are not your resume. You are not your mistakes. You are not your bank account. You are not your weight, your status, your accolades. You are not your history. You are presence. You are divine awareness expressing itself through human form. And you are free to stop measuring and start being right now. And so, in the space where you stop measuring, something miraculous happens. The noise quiets. The inner critic, that relentless architect of self-judgment, begins to lose its grip. Because it cannot survive in stillness. It feeds on striving, on judgment, on comparison, but it starves in presence. The moment you choose to simply be, it fades like a shadow under sunlight. You begin to hear something else. A subtler voice. A softer current running beneath the surface of your thoughts. It is not loud, it never was, but it has always been there waiting. This is the voice of your soul. The part of you that has never doubted your worth, never questioned your belonging, never once asked you to be more than you already are. This is the voice that says, you were born of stars, and stars do not audition to shine. You were born of light, and light never apologizes for its presence. You were born whole, not to become, but to remember. And as you begin to remember, you shed the layers that never truly belong to you. The need to compare, the compulsion to impress, the addiction to validation, they fall away. Like old garments you no longer need to wear. You start noticing the sacred in the ordinary, the way sunlight dances on a leaf, the sound of your own breath echoing eternity, the eyes of a stranger that reflect your own humanity back to you. These are not small things, they are everything. They are life as it was always meant to be lived, in presence, in awe, in deep intimacy with now. You no longer rush through moments to get somewhere else, because you realize there is no there. There is only ever here. And in the here, everything you sought out there is already waiting. Peace is here. Love is here. God is here. And you, when you stop measuring, are finally here too. When you live in the now, the ego becomes quiet. Because the ego lives in time. It thrives in future and past, in what could have been and what might be. But the soul is timeless. It lives only in presence. It does not measure time. It feels eternity in a moment. And that is your invitation to trade time for presence, to trade striving for stillness, to trade your to-do list for your to-be list. Because in the end, no one remembers how efficient you were. They remember how present you were. They remember your presence, the way you made them feel safe, seen, loved, and alive. That is the legacy of a being who has stopped measuring and started being. We are not here to climb ladders that lead nowhere. We are not here to chase carrots on sticks made of illusions. We are here to feel, to awaken, to remember, to love. And love, true love, does not measure. It does not say, I will love you when. It does not ask, what have you done to deserve me? Love simply is. It does not come from achievement. It does not bloom from performance. It arises when you strip away everything false and stand naked in your truth. To stop measuring is to return to love. To stop measuring is to let go of the scales that were never built to weigh what really matters. You cannot measure compassion. You cannot graph grace. You cannot chart the depth of a soul. These things defy metrics because they are infinite, and so are you. So take a breath. Right here, right now. No improvement necessary, no milestone required, no applause needed. Just be. Feel the divine pulse inside your chest. Feel the quiet miracle of being alive. Feel the unearned grace that holds you even when you fall. You are not your productivity. You are not your progress report. You are not a performance. You are a sacred being of light, here to embody truth. And the truth is this: you are already home. You always were. When you stop measuring, you return to your breath. And when you return to your breath, you return to life. Not the life dictated by schedules and goals and expectations, but the life that existed before language, the life that simply is. A tree does not keep track of its growth. A bird does not tally how many times it sings. The ocean does not measure its waves. It simply moves, it simply flows, it simply is. And so can you. The spiritual path is not about adding more. It is about subtracting all that is not you. The metrics, the labels, the masks, all of it can fall away. And underneath, what remains is not lacking, not unfinished, not unworthy, but whole. This wholeness cannot be earned. It cannot be achieved. It must be remembered. You were born with it. You are it. The tragedy is not that we forget who we are. The tragedy is that we spend so much of our lives trying to become what we never needed to be. And yet, even this forgetting is part of the sacred journey. The soul is not in a hurry. It is patient, like the stars, like the mountains, like eternity itself. It waits quietly, faithfully, until you are ready to return. And when you do, it welcomes you without judgment. Because your soul has never once measured your worth. It has only loved you. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where your growth lives. And this moment, this breath is enough. Yes, the world will tempt you to keep measuring. It will hand you new yardsticks every day, more goals, more boxes to check, more comparisons to make. But each time you feel the urge to measure, pause, breathe, feel, and ask yourself, is this who I really am? Or is this who I've been taught to be? Because your being is not here to compete. It is here to radiate. It is here to live from the inside out. When you live from being, not from doing, everything becomes an act of presence. Washing a dish becomes meditation. Holding a hand becomes communion. Walking down the street becomes a miracle. And your life, simple, unmeasured, becomes a sanctuary. You will notice that joy begins to arise, not because you finally arrived somewhere, but because you finally stopped trying to arrive. You realize that the now is not a step on the path, it is the path. And the path is made of presence. And presence is the portal through which love, healing, and freedom enter. When you stop measuring, you allow yourself to feel again. Truly feel. Not analyze or fix or control, but feel. And feeling is sacred. Tears are sacred. Stillness is sacred. The soft ache in your chest that you've been trying to outrun for years, that too is sacred. It's not here to be solved, it's here to be held. And when you hold it with love, without trying to change it, you are being, you are healing, you are returning to the truth. The truth is, you were never meant to be someone else's idea of success. You were never meant to fit into a mold that has no room for your soul. You were never meant to look outward for permission to rest, to breathe, to feel worthy. Your worth is not on trial. It is not up for negotiation. It is not subject to the opinions of others. It is yours, innate, divine, eternal. You do not need to become more valuable. You need only to stop believing you are not already sacred. Let go of the checklist that says, when I get there, then I'll be enough. Let go of the scoreboard that keeps track of wins and losses in a game your soul never agreed to play. Let go of the measuring tape wrapped around your life like chains. Let it all fall. And in the silence that remains, listen. You'll hear the whisper, you were always enough. And this is not a concept, it is a vibration. It is a knowing that arises not from your mind, but from your being. It does not speak in loud declarations, it sings in stillness. It moves like warm light across your skin. It lives in your breath, in your body, in your eyes when they stop trying to impress and simply see. The deeper you enter this truth, the more you begin to notice what is no longer needed. Old thoughts, old beliefs, old identities. They begin to shed themselves like autumn leaves, not because you're fighting them, but because they no longer fit the energy of who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is not a better version of who you were. It is a freer, truer revelation of who you have always been. This is the paradox of the spiritual path. You do not become someone new. You unbecome everything that is not you. You are not here to chase enlightenment like a prize. You are here to remember it is already within you. And you will not remember through effort. You will remember through surrender, through softness, through trust. Trust that your being is enough. Trust that your presence is your power. Trust that you don't need to be extraordinary to be divine. You already are. You were created from the same source that made oceans, galaxies, laughter, and music. You were formed by the same love that spins the planets. That love lives in you. And it asks nothing of you except that you let go of anything that tells you otherwise. So take another breath. Let it fill you, not with pressure, but with peace. Let it remind you, you are not your output. You are not your timeline. You are not your follower count. You are not your past. You are presence. You are love. You are here. And here, in this unmeasured, undivided, unapologetic moment is where life truly begins. There is a deep freedom in no longer needing to keep score, no longer needing to prove, no longer needing to rise each day with the burden of not yet. It is the freedom to greet the morning without the story, to meet your own eyes in the mirror and see not a project to fix, but a soul to embrace. It is the end of the exhausting chase. And in that ending, life begins to feel like breath again, slow, sacred, effortless. You don't have to achieve peace. You only have to stop resisting it. You don't have to manufacture worthiness. You only have to stop burying it beneath layers of who you think you should be. Peace is not the reward for doing everything right. It's the natural state that returns when you stop trying to be someone else and you are enough. Not because of your titles, not because of your achievements, not because of your productivity, but because you are an emanation of life itself. Look around you, the stars, the rivers, the seasons, none of them strive to prove they belong. They simply are. And so are you. Worthy without earning, valuable without proof, beautiful without measurement. When you rest in being, a different kind of clarity arrives. Not the kind you think your way into the kind you feel. A knowing in your bones that says, I can let go now. I can breathe now. I can allow now. And the moment you allow yourself to be here fully, the whole world softens around you. The tension you carried in your shoulders dissolves. The story you were repeating in your mind goes quiet. The craving to be somewhere else fades because you are no longer divided against yourself. To be is to unify, to gather every part of you, the frightened parts, the joyful parts, the grieving parts, the grateful parts, and bring them into presence, into love, into now. And in that reunion, there is power. Not the power of dominance or control, but the power of presence. The power that cannot be taken, cannot be stolen, cannot be diminished, because it was never external to begin with. You stop chasing validation from others, because your inner being no longer begs for permission to exist. You stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never built to hold your fullness. You stop editing your truth just to be accepted, because you realize your truth is not up for negotiation. Your soul is not here for performance. It is here for embodiment. And embodiment means being fully present with what is. You start to notice that the love you were searching for in achievement has always lived in stillness. That the safety you sought in status has always been waiting in your own breath. That the belonging you craved in outer circles is already alive within your inner circle, the sacred place where your soul sits in silence and says, welcome home. This is not passivity. This is power. This is not resignation. This is realignment. You're not giving up on your dreams. You're letting go of the illusion that you need to measure yourself against them to be enough. You're no longer climbing a ladder to reach your own worth. You're standing on sacred ground and realizing you were already whole. And as this truth roots itself in you, the fear begins to dissolve. Fear is born from separation, the belief that who you are is not enough for what life demands. But when you remember your essence, fear has no ground to stand on. It may visit, but it no longer owns you, because you are rooted in being, not in outcome, not in perception, but in the eternal now. This now, this breath, is not a step to somewhere else. It is the destination. And in this destination, nothing is missing. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply arriving into the deeper truth that nothing needs to be added to what is already sacred. And in this sacredness, you begin to feel gratitude, not the performative kind, but the embodied kind. The kind that bubbles up when you look at your hands and remember how much they've carried. The kind that rises when you watch the wind move through the trees and realize it's moving through you too. The kind that humbles you to tears when you remember this life is a gift, not a test. A classroom, not a courtroom. A miracle, not a measurement. And so you bow, not in defeat, but in reverence. You bow to the soul within you. You bow to the moments that broke you open. You bow to the pain that taught you to feel. You bow to the silence that brought you home. You bow to the path that led you back to now. Being is the art of bowing inward, of surrendering not as a loss, but as a sacred return. And when you surrender the measurement, the comparisons, the timelines, the scorecards, you make space for what's real. You make space for joy, for grace, for truth. And truth will never demand you to be anything other than what you already are. The world will still spin, people will still chase, noise will still rise around you like a storm of urgency, but you will be anchored because you no longer live by the rhythm of performance. You live by the rhythm of presence, and that rhythm is slow, sacred, timeless. You walk differently when you're no longer rushing to prove. You breathe differently when you're no longer trying to convince. You love differently when you stop asking for permission to be whole. Everything shifts when you stop measuring and start being. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to defend it. You just live it quietly, authentically, unapologetically, and from that stillness, real transformation is born. Not the kind that makes headlines, the kind that makes peace, the kind that frees you from the invisible chains of comparison, the kind that awakens a soft smile in your heart because you finally remember you are not missing anything, you were never broken, you were only buried under expectations that were never yours. You can release them now. You can forgive the part of you that tried to earn love. You can forgive the part of you that thought it had to be perfect to be safe. You can forgive the part of you that measured worth by productivity, by applause, by progress. None of those parts were wrong. They were just trying to survive in a world that taught them they weren't enough. But now you know better. And because you know better, you can love deeper. And because you love deeper, you live freer. The path of being is not without pain, but it is without resistance. And without resistance, pain becomes something else. It becomes teacher. It becomes sculptor. It becomes the sacred invitation to drop deeper into the now, into yourself, into truth. And the truth is not complicated. It is not wrapped in formulas or hidden behind achievements. It is simple, like all great things. It sounds like this. You are loved, you are whole, you are here. And here is enough. Here is the temple. Here is the miracle. You may have spent years believing you had to earn what was already yours, that you had to climb to be seen, that you had to hustle to be worthy. But let me remind you again, you were seen the moment you were born. You were worthy the moment you breathed. You belonged before you even spoke your name. All the chasing, all the striving, all the measuring, it brought you to the edge of yourself. And now you get to leap, not into more striving, but into surrender. Not into improvement, but into acceptance. Not into performance, but into peace. You were not born to be consumed by judgment. You were born to reflect light, to embody truth, to walk this earth as love made visible. So stop counting, stop comparing, stop justifying your being with what you produce. You are not a brand. You are not a business card. You are not a label. You are life itself. And life, real life, cannot be measured. It is felt, it is lived, it is breathed. When you finally stop measuring, you rediscover wonder. You walk outside and realize that the sky does not ask for your resume. The sunrise doesn't care if you met your goals. The trees aren't waiting for you to be perfect. They celebrate your being. Because all of nature understands what we so often forget, that your presence is enough, that your soul is worthy just by existing. So today, I invite you to start again, not by doing more, but by doing less. By slowing down, by breathing deeper, by listening inward, by walking gently through your life with your heart wide open. Not as someone trying to win at life, but as someone finally willing to live. And to live is to be raw, to be honest, to be seen without needing to impress, to be kind to yourself even when you fall short, to be awake to the miracle of the mundane, to be love, not as a performance, but as a posture, to be truth, not as a philosophy, but as your natural state. And when you are being, truly being, you are free. Free from the race, free from the metrics, free from the cage of not enough. This is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of your return. And you return not to an ideal, not to a goal, but to yourself. The self that doesn't need fixing, the self that isn't waiting to arrive. The self that has been patiently whispering all along, you are already it. So be still, be soft, be aware, be alive. And remember, you don't need to measure the moment. You just need to be in it. You don't need to measure your worth. You just need to feel it. You don't need to measure the progress. You just need to trust the process. Because life, true, rich, unfiltered life begins the moment you stop measuring and start being. There comes a moment in every life when the soul whispers softly at first that something isn't right, that despite the things you've gathered, the achievements you've counted, the steps you've followed, something remains untouched, unawakened, unfulfilled. Not because life has failed you, but because your thoughts have not yet remembered their power. You see, you are not merely a body moving through the world. You are a field of consciousness creating it. And the lens through which you look at the world, your thoughts, is not a passive reflection of life, but the very projector of its quality. What you think is not just commentary, it's alchemy. You don't see things as they are. You see things as you are through the stories you've chosen, through the meanings you've inherited, through the emotions you allow to linger like smoke in the chambers of your mind. Your outer world is always mirroring the dominant vibration of your inner world. And your thinking, moment by moment, is the tuning fork. The universe, being eternally impartial, says only this: as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. You are not what the world calls you. You are not your name, your title, your reputation, or your fears. You are the thinker behind the thoughts, the dreamer behind the mask, the awareness, watching it all unfold, and waiting, always waiting, for you to reclaim your authorship of this life. Most people never pause to wonder, who is doing the thinking in here? And where did these thoughts come from? They repeat patterns like a song stuck on repeat. Songs of lack, of worry, of comparison, of judgment, never realizing that they are dancing to music. They never chose that their mind has become a house built by strangers, and now they live inside it, calling it truth. But thought is not fixed. It is fluid. It can be questioned, it can be healed, it can be elevated, and when it is, life itself begins to take a new shape. The quality of your life is not determined by the conditions you're in, but by the conversations you're having with yourself about those conditions. It's not the storm that breaks you. It's the belief that you cannot sail through it. Begin to listen, truly listen, to the voice that speaks just beneath the noise, the still, silent knowing that's always been with you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't panic, it doesn't echo the world's madness. It simply reminds you, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which thoughts get to stay. And that is the first liberation, to recognize that you are not a prisoner of your thinking. You are its master. But mastery begins with awareness. Every moment you catch yourself thinking a thought that limits you, a thought that shrinks your spirit or dim your light, is a holy moment, a spiritual opportunity. Not to shame yourself, but to remember yourself. To remember that no one installed that thought without your permission, and that now, in this breath, you can choose again. The quality of your life is not waiting at the end of some distant achievement. It is shaped, molded in the unseen furnace of your inner dialogue. Do you feed the flame of resentment? Do you pour gasoline on thoughts of fear, of not being enough, of being left behind? Do you carry the past into today like a sack of stones, repeating, "This is just how I am," as if your identity were carved in stone rather than breathed into being? Or do you wake up each morning and choose a new vibration? Do you speak to yourself with love before the world gets a chance to interfere? Do you plant thoughts of peace, joy, forgiveness, and water them with presence until they bloom into a life that reflects your soul? Most people treat thoughts like facts, But thoughts are just clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. And in that realization, you are free. Let me ask you gently, what have you been thinking about today? Because that's what you've been living. The world around you is echoing back the tone you set in silence, and nothing will change until the thinking does. So if you want to heal your relationships, change your thinking about connection. If you want to find peace, change your thinking about the past. If you want to create abundance, change your thinking about worth. And if you want to love yourself, change your thinking about who you believe you are. It is never about adding more. It is always about subtracting the noise. You were born whole. You were born wise. You were born connected to the divine. And every thought that told you otherwise was an illusion borrowed from a world that forgot how to see. But today you remember, that is the beginning of everything. The moment you begin to observe your thinking without becoming it, something miraculous happens. A quiet space opens up between stimulus and response, between the noise of the world and the whisper of your soul. In that space lives your power not to react, but to choose, not to cling, but to release, not to fear, but to trust. And that single shift from automatic to aware begins to alter the very texture of your life. You stop being dragged by circumstance and start becoming guided by consciousness. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable and begin to align with what is eternal within you. There is no circumstance outside of you that holds more weight than the thoughts you are rehearsing inside you. You may not control what others do, what they say, or what has already happened, but you do control the meaning you assign to it. And meaning is everything. A thought of betrayal can become a teacher of boundaries. A thought of loss can become a doorway to gratitude. A thought of failure can become the seed of wisdom. It all depends on the thinker. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness is circumstantial, that peace is a destination, that worth must be proven. But none of that is true. It never was. The outer world is merely the shadow cast by the shape of your thoughts. And when you sculpt those thoughts with love, with intention, with a gentle but firm sense of presence, the world reflects a beauty that was waiting all along. No spiritual teacher, no enlightened soul ever reached peace by rearranging the furniture of the world. They reached it by rearranging the architecture of their inner world. They learned to master the mind, to see through its tricks, to soften the grip of judgment, and to return again and again to the spaciousness of now. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They created a perfect perception. And that is the invitation for you. The quality of your life is shaped by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Not, why is this happening to me? But what is this showing me? Not, what do I lack? But, what is life trying to bring forward in me through this? The quality of your thinking is determined by your willingness to surrender the need to be right, to be certain, to be in control. Because real transformation does not come from control. It comes from trust. It comes from the surrender of false stories and the embrace of the sacred present. You were not born to ruminate in regret or spiral in worry. You were born to create. And your primary creation is the thought you allow to take root in your mind. That thought becomes emotion. That emotion becomes behavior. That behavior becomes character. And character becomes destiny. Trace it all back, and it begins with one silent seed, one thought. So plant well. Think of your thoughts as guests in the temple of your mind. Who are you letting in today? Who are you allowing to sit at the table of your awareness? Are they voices of fear or faith? Are they the voices of past wounds or present miracles? You are the gatekeeper. You are the master gardener. And whatever you nourish within will blossom in the world without. Do not underestimate this power. It is not a metaphor, it is spiritual law. Change the frequency of your thoughts, and you will alter the symphony of your life. This is not about positive thinking for the sake of ignoring pain. It is about conscious thinking that acknowledges pain but does not build a home inside it. It is about choosing the higher perspective even when the lower one screams louder. It is about rising not because the world demands it, but because your soul remembers its wings. And yes, there will be days when the old thoughts return, when the inner critic bangs on the door, when the fog sets in again. That's okay. This is not a path of perfection. It is a path of presence. And presence is a practice. Every moment you return to your breath, every moment you observe without judgment, every moment you choose a higher thought that is victory, that is healing, that is awakening. Your thoughts are not who you are. They are passing weather systems in the vast sky of your being. Let them come, let them go, but don't let them build cities without your consent. Don't let them shape your life from unconscious repetition. You are not here to be a mirror of past programming. You are here to be a lighthouse, steady, awake, and rooted in truth. Let go of the belief that change begins outside of you. Let go of the belief that one day, when circumstances are just right, then you'll feel peace. The truth is simpler and more liberating. When you choose peaceful thoughts, your life becomes peaceful. When you think thoughts of compassion, you walk in compassion. When you honor yourself in thought, the world begins to honor you. It's not magic, it's alignment. And alignment begins when the mind remembers its servant role, not its master role. When the ego is seen clearly not as an enemy, but as a confused guide doing its best to protect you through fear. But you, dear soul, do not need to be protected by fear. You need to be liberated by truth. And the truth is this: your thinking shapes your frequency. And your frequency writes the melody your life will play. Then listen deeply now. Not just with your ears, but with the whole of your being, with the space behind your chest where the silence lives, with the gentle fire of awareness that never flickers, no matter how chaotic the world becomes. That space knows your life is not dictated by chance, nor is it controlled by fate. It is directed by the silent compass of your attention, and your attention always flows in the direction of your thoughts. Where your focus goes, your energy grows. Where your energy grows, your reality unfolds. And the seed of it all is thought. So if your life feels noisy, heavy, cluttered with conflict and confusion, the answer is not to rearrange the people around you or chase more distractions. The answer is to cleanse the temple of your mind. Dust off the old assumptions, wash away the fear-stained beliefs, open the windows of perception, and let the light of awareness pour in. Ask yourself, is this thought bringing me closer to freedom or further into suffering? That one question, asked honestly and gently, can save a lifetime of unnecessary pain. You do not need to believe every thought you think. You are not obligated to obey the voices that echo with limitation, fear, or doubt. You are allowed to pause, to breathe, to question. You are allowed to say, I no longer choose to live under that belief. And in that moment, chains begin to fall. Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind that have been weighing down your spirit for years. And that release, that sweet, invisible liberation, that is the soul beginning to remember itself. Many people are walking through life asleep to the miracle of their mind, asleep to the truth that heaven and hell are not places we go, but frequencies we choose. A thought of bitterness is a step toward hell. A thought of compassion is a step toward heaven. And these steps, taken moment by moment, build the path your feet will follow. Do not wait for a burning bush. Do not wait for thunder in the sky or a voice to break through the clouds. The voice is already inside you. It speaks in the silence. It speaks when you slow down long enough to hear the deeper questions. What am I rehearsing in my mind each day? What am I practicing with my inner dialogue? And does it serve the life I truly want to live? Because here is the hidden truth. You are always practicing something. Every thought you entertain, every judgment you accept, every fear you repeat, you are strengthening a pathway in your mind. That pathway becomes the direction of your life. So ask yourself, is this a path of light? Is this a path of freedom? Or am I unconsciously paving roads to old prisons? You are not broken. You are not behind. You are simply ready to awaken. That is why these words resonate. Not because they are new, but because they are ancient truths you've always known. Deep down, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, your soul has always whispered, I am the thinker. I am the chooser. And I am free to choose again. Begin now. Begin today. Let this moment be the turning point, not the dramatic kind that needs lightning bolts or emotional fireworks, but the quiet kind, where the soul simply stands up and says, no more thoughts that shrink me, no more stories that shame me, no more identities borrowed from pain. In their place, you begin to plant the seeds of clarity, of love, of worthiness. You begin to think as if life is on your side. You begin to believe that peace is not something to chase, but something to allow. You begin to live from the knowing that you are enough, not because you proved it, but because you remembered it. And that shift, subtle though it may be, is how miracles begin. Because when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. When you change the way you feel, you change what you believe is possible. And when you change what you believe is possible, the universe rearranges itself to reflect that belief. Not because it was withholding, but because you were. You were withholding permission to receive because you didn't believe you were worthy. You were withholding love because you were afraid of being hurt. You were withholding peace because you thought chaos was your default setting. But now you begin to allow. And allowing begins with a thought. A single thought that whispers, what if the old story is not the truth? And once that thought enters, the whole house of illusion begins to shake. Because the mind that has built its home on fear cannot withstand the gentle wind of truth. That truth is simple. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not the voice that says you'll never make it. You are the awareness that hears that voice and chooses something higher. So today, choose again. Choose the thought that lifts you. Choose the thought that brings you back to stillness. Choose the thought that speaks to your future, not your fear. And when you forget, because you will simply remember that forgetting is part of remembering. Falling asleep is part of waking up. There is no shame in it, only grace. The quality of your life is not about what you have. It is not about what they think. It is about what you believe, what you nurture, what you entertain in the invisible world of your mind. And that is where your greatest work must begin, not in trying to force the external, but in softening, cleansing, and renewing the internal. Because when the internal world is healed, the external world becomes a mirror of that healing. And you become the light you were seeking. And when you become the light you were seeking, you stop chasing shadows. You stop grasping at empty promises wrapped in noise. You stop running from yourself because you finally realize there is nowhere to run. Everything you've ever wanted was already resting within the quiet space of your own being, waiting for your thoughts to align with its presence, not to earn it, but to see it. To see that your worth was never in question, only in recognition. That love was never absent, only obscured by the fog of conditioned belief. There is a profound shift that happens when you stop thinking in reaction and begin thinking in creation. When you stop allowing every passing fear to dictate your emotional climate and instead become the conscious author of your internal world. In that shift, you stop being a thermometer reacting to the temperature of the world, and you become the thermostat setting the tone of your life from the inside out. That is not philosophy, that is power. That is freedom. That is mastery. It doesn't happen by force. It happens by remembrance. And remembering is a sacred act. It's sitting in stillness long enough to hear the thoughts beneath the thoughts. It's breathing deeply enough to separate the truth from the trauma. It's choosing to become the observer instead of the reactor again and again until the old wiring begins to dissolve and a new way of being begins to rise. You cannot think your way to peace through judgment. You cannot think your way to love through resistance. But you can return always to a thought that is in harmony with who you truly are. A thought of grace, a thought of openness, a thought of I am already enough. And from that thought, a new vibration radiates outward, not in a shout, but in a silent frequency that draws new realities to your feet. Your job is not to fix the world. Your job is to think in alignment with truth and let the world respond to your alignment. That's how reality changes, not from resistance, but from resonance. If you don't like what life is reflecting, look not at the mirror, but at the face you're presenting to it. Change the internal pattern, and the reflection must follow. So many of us are addicted to fixing. We want to fix the job, the relationship, the circumstances. But rarely do we stop to examine the thinking that attracted those circumstances to begin with. And until that examination takes place, we find ourselves repeating the same storylines with different characters. Because the pattern was never out there, it was in here, in the thoughts we chose to believe, in the identities we wore like armor, in the narratives we never questioned. But now you see it. And with that seeing comes choice. And with choice comes healing. And with healing comes liberation. This is your turning point. Not because the stars have aligned, not because the world has suddenly become easier, but because you've decided to no longer abandon yourself with your thoughts. You've decided to no longer speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to another soul. You've decided to no longer give your power away to fleeting fears and old scripts. You've decided at last to come home to yourself. And home is not a place. It is a state of being. It is the vibration of love you allow yourself to rest in. It is the clarity that emerges when the mind softens. It is the deep, unwavering knowing that you are not here to be perfect, but to be whole. Not here to compete, but to contribute. Not here to survive, but to awaken. And awakening begins with thought. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, but subtle, consistent thoughts of truth. Thoughts like, I am not my past. I am not this fear. I am not a victim of circumstance. I am a divine being, temporarily inhabiting form. I am allowed to think new thoughts. I am allowed to release the old. I am allowed to create a new reality, starting now, and then you do. Not all at once, but moment by moment, thought by thought, and those small shifts begin to gather, like droplets that become a stream, a current, a river, and finally, a sea of transformation. You look around, and the world seems to smile back, not because it has changed, but because you have. Your thinking has softened, your frequency has elevated, and the quality of your life has become the natural result. And as you continue on this path, not forward, but inward, you begin to realize that life has always been speaking to you in the language of reflection. Not punishment, not reward, but feedback. It shows you again and again the quality of your thoughts made visible. If your world is chaotic, perhaps your inner world has been cluttered. If your days feel heavy, perhaps your thoughts have been weighted by beliefs that no longer serve you. This is not to blame, this is to empower. Because if thought created it, thought can change it. You are not here to control every outcome. You are here to master your inner response to each outcome. That mastery is not stoicism, it is sacred receptivity. It is the art of choosing peace without the need for perfection. It is the quiet strength of being grounded in awareness, no matter what storms may come. And that grounding begins with one sacred habit: choosing higher thoughts. This is not about positive thinking as a mask. This is about truthful thinking as a mirror. Thinking that does not pretend life is perfect, but sees clearly that you are not the victim of it. That even when you do not control the wind, you can still set your sail, and your thoughts are the sail. So when the day begins, ask yourself, what direction will I sail today? Will you drift with the currents of fear? Will you replay the grievances of yesterday and call it truth? Will you grip tightly to your judgments and call it strength? Or will you release, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up? Waking up to the truth that your mind is not a prison unless you let it become one. Your power lies in awareness. Awareness that watches thought without clinging to it. Awareness that sees a fearful thought and smiles gently, saying, I hear you, but I do not follow you. Awareness that witnesses an old wound rising and says, I understand. And I choose to bless it, not repeat it. This is the quiet revolution, the inner uprising that changes everything not by force but by vision, by returning to the truth that thought is creative, not reactive, that your experience of life is not happening to you, but through you, through the lens of your beliefs, through the patterns of your focus, through the tone of your self-talk. Speak to yourself kindly, not because it's trendy, but because your cells are listening, your nervous system is listening, your energy field is listening, and every thought you repeat becomes a vibration in your body, a signal to your reality, a prophecy unfolding in silence. So speak with reverence, even when you're tired, even when you're unsure, especially when you're afraid. That is when the power of your thinking becomes sacred. That is when you step not into illusion, but into alignment, into truth, into love. Not love as sentiment, but love as vibration, love as clarity. Love as the refusal to think thoughts that betray your divinity. Let your thinking become a prayer, not with folded hands, but with an open mind. Let every thought be a candle lit in the dark room of unconsciousness. Let your inner dialogue reflect your divine inheritance, not your conditioned past. You are not here to rehearse wounds. You are here to remember wholeness. And when you forget, as we all do, return again. Return to the breath, return to the stillness, return to the observer within you who has never been harmed, never been afraid, never been less than divine. That witness within you is your anchor. And when your thinking returns to that awareness, the world begins to respond in kind. You may notice people treating you differently. You may find synchronicities arriving with more ease. You may watch as what once felt like effort begins to feel like flow. This is not coincidence. This is coherence. Coherence between who you are, how you think, and what you allow yourself to feel. And when that coherence is present, miracles are not rare, they are natural, because miracles are not events. They are perceptions. They are shifts in thinking from fear to love, from lack to trust, from separation to unity. And the more often you allow that shift in the quiet space of your mind, the more your entire life becomes a sanctuary of grace. You were never broken. You were only believing broken thoughts. You were never unworthy. You were only echoing unworthy beliefs. You were never disconnected. You were only distracted. And now you remember. You remember that every thought is a paintbrush, and your life is the canvas. Paint with intention. Paint with vision. Paint with love. Because the masterpiece of your life is not made with your hands, it's made with your mind. Then let us keep walking gently, steadily, down this sacred path of remembering. Because remembering who you are is not a grand announcement, not a mountaintop moment with trumpets and crowds. It is a soft return, a humble realignment with the center of your being. And that return begins with a single conscious thought. I no longer choose to think in opposition to my soul. You see, the soul doesn't argue. It doesn't scream. It doesn't compete for your attention. It simply waits quietly, faithfully, lovingly beneath the chatter of the mind. And when your thinking finally slows, when you stop rehearsing the noise long enough to be still, you feel it. That calm, sacred knowing, that presence that cannot be described, only experienced. That is who you are beneath the thoughts. But most people never meet that presence because they are too busy managing a mind that was never taught how to rest. A mind trained in survival, not serenity. A mind so addicted to solving problems that it forgets the greatest solution is often surrender. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control your thinking through force, the more chaotic it becomes. Because the ego loves a fight, but the soul whispers, there is nothing to fight. There is only something to release. So release it. Release the idea that your thoughts define you. Release the belief that your worth must be earned. Release the illusion that peace is conditional. And in that releasing, you begin to rise, not with effort, but with ease. Because the heavy thoughts fall away, and what remains is light. And what is light always remembers how to rise. The quality of your life, beloved, is not about the things you can accumulate, not about the titles you can achieve, not even about the milestones you cross. The quality of your life is about the quality of your presence. And presence is the gift you give yourself when your thoughts no longer drag you away from the now. In this moment here, now there is no problem. There is only breath. There is only being. And there is the choice right here to think a thought that brings you closer to peace. A thought that opens the window rather than slams the door. A thought that loves instead of judges. A thought that forgives instead of punishes. A thought that lifts instead of locks. And yes, you are allowed to choose those thoughts, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because those are the moments that shape the landscape of your life. Anyone can think beautifully when things are easy, but to think lovingly in the face of fear, to think kindly when the world is cruel, to think abundantly when the bank account says otherwise, that is the true power of spiritual maturity. That is the fire of awakened thinking. That is the light that cannot be put out by circumstance. You are not your old reactions. You are not your unconscious habits. You are not your childhood programming. You are not your inner critic. You are not your inherited shame. You are not the wounds of your lineage. You are the sky that holds it all. You are the space between the thoughts. You are the stillness beneath the storm. And in that stillness, you are free. From this stillness, begin again. Begin thinking in the language of truth. I am here. I am whole. I am aligned. I am willing. I am enough. You don't need the world to agree with you to think in alignment with love. You don't need proof to think in alignment with abundance. You don't need apologies to think in alignment with forgiveness. The outer world does not need to shift first. You do. And once you do, the world, as if by divine reflection, follows. Not always instantly, not always in the ways you expect, but always faithfully, because your outer world is a delayed reflection of your inner devotion. So devote yourself to thoughts that heal, to thoughts that build, to thoughts that honor your sacredness. Devote yourself to thinking like someone who knows they are connected to Source, because you are. You always have been. No thought can sever that connection. But every thought can either obscure it or reveal it. Choose the thoughts that reveal. Choose the thoughts that set you free. Choose the thoughts that invite miracles. Because when the quality of your thinking rises, your whole life becomes a reflection of heaven lived on earth. And the door to that heaven is always unlocked. You simply need to think your way home. Then let us in, not with noise, but with a whisper, the kind that reaches deeper than any shout ever could. Your life is not waiting on the outside, it is blooming from the inside. You are not here to collect thoughts like trophies or chase perfection through the mind. You are here to think in alignment with the truth you already are. So pause, breathe, and remember, the quality of your life is the quality of the thoughts you nurture when no one else is listening. Choose thoughts that return you to peace. Choose thoughts that remember your wholeness. Choose thoughts that make room for grace. And when in doubt, choose love. Because the most powerful thought you will ever think is, I already am. And from that knowing, everything changes forever.